Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Good. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Anyone in the audience use Firefox as their main browser? Okay, a few people. Anyone use anything other than Chrome as their main browser? Some more? Okay. Yeah, this is what Google Earth looks like on Firefox. You may be familiar with this page or this types of pages. This one says, oh no, Google Earth isn't supported in your browser yet. Try this link in Chrome instead. If you don't have Chrome, download it here. I'm not going to go into into detail of the implications of Chrome-only sites in this talk. That could be a talk all on its own. I'm merely going to scratch the surface and say it's annoying if we've experienced this. To be told that your browser of choice isn't supported to get to the thing that you want to get to. The workaround in these cases is we switch to another browser that may not be our favorite. It's nothing against Chrome. Chrome is my favorite browser personally, but it isn't everybody's, and it's certainly not the only browser out there. But as far as our Google Earth example here, you switch to Chrome, and you get the content you're after. So Chrome-only side implications aside, as far as our immediate example goes, you were able to find a workaround for your unsupported browser. You just switched to another one, and that's it. You got what you needed. But what if you didn't have a choice? What if you only had one browser for everything you wanted to do on the web, and it wasn't Chrome? It wasn't even Firefox or Safari or Opera or Opera Mini even. What if your one browser was some obscure browser that 90% of developers have never heard of, and it was last updated last year, and it cost you £1,000 to update? You had to consume all of the web exclusively through that browser. It sounds like a weird parallel universe you wouldn't want to be caught in. But for millions of people today, this is exactly what the web feels like every day. So if you're deaf, there's no other browser that you can switch to when that conference talk you're trying to watch doesn't have captions. And props to Conf for the live captions over there. So if you think like auto-generated captions in YouTube can save you, you've got another thing coming. This is a talk I gave last year about accessibility, or about something that died in some horrible process. We'll never know. So we break the web every day, but forgetting to add captions is just one way in which we break the web for millions of people with disabilities every day. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about other ways in which we do this and may not notice, and then what to do about it. Some quick wins. We'll go over some quick wins we can do. So my name is Laura Carvajal. I'm a senior developer at the Financial Times. I've been working there for about 2 years. I used to work in the ft.com team, the team that built the website for the newspaper. And for the last 6 months of that, I was leading the accessibility team within that. Nowadays, I work in a team called Internal Products, where we build software for our employees just to make their lives better. So in a way, it kind of means I kind of spend the day building stuff for myself, and then someone pays me, which is pretty good. So today we're going to talk about, we're going to cover a little bit about what accessibility is, what assistive technology is, and then we'll look at 4 ways we tend to break the web, for just very common ways we break the web for accessibility and may not notice, and then what to do about it. So what is web accessibility in the first place? There are many definitions out there, but there's one that I really like, and it says, web accessibility means that people with disabilities can use the web. That's it. It boils it down to making sure we're not putting up barriers to access the thing we've just built. We tend to be more familiar with barriers in the physical world, but just like stairs can be a barrier, there are things that we do on the web that deny users access in a similar way. So to understand how this all happens, I'm going to quickly go over how we can split disabilities roughly into 4 categories: physical, visual, hearing, and cognitive. So these are very broad categories, but for example, a physical disability may alter a person's fine motor function, which may mean they primarily navigate the web using a keyboard. There's also voice recognition. You could navigate the web by having your computer recognize your voice, and you tell it, click link number 1 or click button number 2, and it does that for you. And it generally means you're navigating the web without using a mouse. We'll go into the implications of that in a little bit. This is in terms of input, telling the computer what to do. In terms of output you have things like screen readers, which read out the screen to you, tell you what's on the screen, and Braille displays, which kind of do the same, just translate what's on the screen into Braille. And text-to-speech, where you select some text on the screen, and then the computer reads it out to you. And there's a lot more than those, but you really don't need to be an assistive tech pro to start getting accessibility right. So if you're just starting out, I kind of suggest flipping things around and asking yourself, does my site work without a mouse, without visual cues, and without sound? There's a lot more to check to get accessibility really right, but if we nail these 3, we're off to a really good start. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you 4 sites that look fine, 4 sites you may be familiar with, then some hidden barriers that they have, and the cause in the code for those barriers, and then what to do about it. It's generally, like I said before, quick wins, quick fixes you can do. The first example is Kayak. This is kayak.co.uk. It's a great looking site for booking flights. And it's easy. I just go in, select the city you're flying from, where you're flying to, just typical book your flight site. I choose some dates, and I'm just clicking around, and while I do that, it tells me I found a great price, and I can compare to other providers, etc. So let's say I'm flying with my friend Rebecca, and Rebecca, she's an accessibility tester. She works at the Digital Accessibility Center, which is a non-profit provider of accessibility services, and they audit ft.com every year. So Rebecca primarily uses a keyboard to navigate the web, and she has kindly recorded a video for us to explain why this site that looks fine has some serious accessibility barriers.
Now I'm going to try and tab through the kayak.co.uk website. This is done by pressing the tab key, and I would then be expecting highlighting to appear on the items that I focus on. But highlighting is only appearing on the fog fields, and that's because they open up when my focus is in them. The rest of the items on the page, there is no focus, meaning I'm not going to know my focus on them, meaning I won't then be able to select them.
So it turns out that it's nearly impossible to book a flight the way I just did before if you're navigating with just the keyboard. And when you type through the page, you don't really see where you are. So I looked at their code a little bit, and I found these things. There are a few problems with these things, but our main one causing the problem we just saw is that outline none at the top. This removes the focus outlines from everything on that form we were just looking at. So I was in DevTools, so I kind of tweaked their code a little bit, got rid of most of that, and just left their site with the default browser behavior. And immediately it looked like this. You immediately see where you are when you're tabbing around, and you can kind of get to the end of booking there. So you can see that blue ring around everything you are tabbing through. So the key message that I want to leave you with here is that just like the cursor is crucial to someone navigating your site using point and click like a mouse or a trackpad, the focus ring is crucial to keyboard users, kind of in the same way. So you know that feeling when you're kind of hooking up to a projector and all of a sudden you lose your pointer and you panic and, oh my God, where am I? And even Apple has added a feature to magnify your pointer when it notices you're starting to shake it like you can't find it. So imagine that feeling every day on half of the sites that you went to. So just like you wouldn't design a site and then say, oh, that cursor is so ugly, I'm just going to just CSS it out. You wouldn't hide a cursor, so don't hide the focus ring. That focus ring is a lot of people's cursor. The good news is that to get focus ring right, we literally have to do nothing at all. So the browser gives us this for free. There are ways you can enhance the basic focus ring. If you have like a complex site, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But this is what the browser gives you. If you do nothing, you get this, and you tab around and you see exactly where you are. So you can think of these default browser styles kind of as your base. There's a lot of room to evolve them, but just having them as they are will get you a long way. So if your site today had this outline 0, like Kayak did, and you removed all that, and you got this, you can pat yourself on the back. You've done a great job, and people can use your site. So when do you need to start evolving things? So if you have a more complex site, you may run into instances where the color of the default browsers, of the default focus styles clash with your background. So depending on your background colors, you might need to tweak this. So this is our original focus ring, well, one of our focus rings. At some point, we had a design team that no longer work at the FT that just asked us to remove it completely. There's like a ensued battle, but this was like halfway through that and what we have now. Like the default styles, we got to the default styles, and you really can't see them on one of our blue backgrounds. So what we did is, with our new design team, they designed a color that's specific for the focus ring, so that it wouldn't clash with any of our background colors. You could see it on any of the background colors that we have. One kind of further thing that you may run into is stakeholders not liking this thing. It's like, what is this thing I see every time I click on a link? Can you get rid of it, please? That's kind of the eternal question. And a few years ago, what you would do is you would have kind of endless arguments trying to explain why these things are important and why people won't be able to use your site if you remove them, da-da-da. But nowadays, you can just bring out the big guns. You can use the focus visible polyfill. This is something that we started using recently. And you can read more about it on the README page. I really recommend it. But in short, it's a polyfill for the focus ring pseudo selector that's coming in CSS4. And I'll show you what it does. So this is, if you're clicking around, you don't see it, but the minute you start tabbing through, you start to see it again. So if anyone's clicking, so you have a stakeholder that clicks around, they won't see it, they won't complain, but people who really need it, who are tabbing through, will see it. And big props to Arjun Gadia from our FT.com team, and Jake Champion and the Origami team, the FT, for enabling this. We've just released this about a week or two ago. So Focus Visible is actually in the CSS4 spec, and the group working on it contribute directly to the W3C. So this is real. This is coming to a browser near you. So again, only tweak the focus styles if you have like a specific need for it, like it clashes with your background or something. But if you don't, or you don't really have much time to dedicate to it, just keep the default. Just don't override it. You'll have gone a long way. The second example I want to show you is from the Independent. So it's independent.co.uk, I think. So another great looking site, beautiful design. And I want to show you, let's see if I can play, yes. So I can choose different subscription packages. And then when I go to the weekend tab, I see that the option that they actually recommend is in there. I can choose it, I can learn more about it, and I can subscribe. Just clicking around, just a few clicks, and I've done it. So let's see. I want to show you, again, Rebecca from the Digital Accessibility Center went through this site and kindly made a video for us, kind of showing us what her experience is like navigating this with the keyboard.
I am now going to try and subscribe to a weekend subscription for the independent newspaper. I will do this by trying to tab through page and trying to tab onto the weekend tab. I'm now pressing the tab key, and as you can see, headings appearing on the links at the top of the page. And I've completely skipped over all of the tabs, so I can, even though I'm in personal, I can't then tab onto personal, weekend and gift to change this, and be able to then be able to sign up for a weekend subscription because I can't tab onto it.
Right, so if you're tabbing through, you can kind of select the different options on the personal pane, but that's it. You can tab on to get access for some reason, but then for some reason the other button you can't tap to, and the most important thing is you can't change the tabs at the top. So it's the focus styles are right. You can know where you are. It's just you can't get to places where you want to get to. So we'll have a look at why that's happening. So one takeaway here is just always test your site without a mouse. I mean, before you ship something to production, just kind of go through it with the keyboard just to see if there's something that you should be able to click that you can't get to with your keyboard. It could be that pay me now button that they can't get to, and then you don't get your money. So test it quickly without a mouse before you release. So having a look at their code, let's see, we can read there a little bit. So we're just inspecting the weekend tab, and we've seen it's like an anchor tag, which is, they normally get focus out of the box from the browser. It's even got a roll of tab, if you see it far on the right, which tells me the person who built it, the team who built this, we're thinking about accessibility maybe, because that's good for accessibility. It tells the screen reader you're on a tab when you focus on it. But you probably spotted that this anchor tag has no href on it. It's got a bunch of Angular. But it's the reason it doesn't get focus on the browser. It's because if it doesn't have an href, the browser assumes it's a link that goes nowhere. So why focus on it? So I guess, let's see. Yeah. Oh, and the same thing happens with the find out more button, which is a button, but it looks like a button, but it's really a link. And we could do a whole talk on why that's good or not good. But what we want to look at here is that it's the same thing. You have an anchor tag with an href that doesn't get focus. So the quick solution here, it's let's see. It's if you can have an href, then just add it. You'll get focus for free. But if not, you need to manually add it to the tab order. Tab order is kind of that sequence of places where you land if you're tabbing through a page. And you do that by adding, let's see, so we're inspecting the weekend tab, and we can add tab index of 0 to that anchor, and that tells the browser this thing needs to be in the tab order, this thing can be tabbed onto, and immediately, if you tab back to where you were, you get a focus ring around it. So doing that with weekend and gift, and also the find out more button at the bottom, just adding those three things, you already have the tab order that you would expect, and people can pay you the money that they want to pay you. So in working on this, I often got asked, so what should have focus? Should I just put tab index on everything so that people can focus on everything? Just trying to be overly helpful, but that can be kind of counterproductive. So I would say the things you want focus on are the things that you would expect to click on if you were using a mouse. So a good way to think about this is when you are sort of navigating through a TV or a video game menu with a remote. You would expect, as you're kind of navigating through that, to see some sort of indication of where you are. So you're just selecting different games, so you would see that ring around your games. You would expect to see probably to be able to get to the buttons at the bottom, or maybe click your avatar at the top. You probably wouldn't expect a focus ring to appear on the battery percentage, because it's not something you would expect to click. So it's fairly intuitive, and just go back to thinking, what are the things I want to click? those are the things that need to have focus. So our third example is Amazon, another site that I really, really like, and I spend a lot more time on than I probably should. So in this example, let's say I have a problem with my Kindle and I need support. So I go to this page, and just by looking at the page, we can tell by the title that it's a support page. And by just having a quick glance at the bottom half of the page, I can see I can get help on my orders, returns, and there it is, device support. Click on there, and I get what I need. So it's just laid out visually, just in a very simple way. If we think about this kind of in terms of markup, you would probably expect that big title at the top to be your H1, and then the blue ones to be H2 maybe, and then click on device support and get what you want. This is a simplified version of what the markup on that page actually is. The thing on the top is actually an H1, which is what we expected, but then everything else is just a link, because it's things you can click through and get to other places, which makes sense. But they're styled in a way, so the returns and refunds, device support, and your orders are styled in a way that makes them look like a heading. So visually, you can tell they're kind of titles. And then below the fold, there's another H1 for something else, and some other things. So let's see. I want to show you another video from Mike from the Digital Accessibility Center. Mike is blind, and he uses a screen reader to navigate the web. And he's going to try and do the same thing I did, just go on this page and try to go to device support. And he's just going to show you what his experience is like.
So I've got a problem with my Kindle, and I've been advised to go to device support. And I've found a couple of issues with trying to access device support. So if I bring up the headings on this page.
Amazon.com help. Heading list dialog. Headings list view. Hello, what can we help you with? :1, 1 of 3. Browse help topics: :1. Learn how to ... 3.
So we've got two issues here. The first one is that we've got duplicated headings at level 1, and then the headings move to a level 3. So ideally, we would need only one instance of a level 1. So
hello, what can we help you with? :1.
Hello, what can we help you with? And then subsections would ideally be given a level 2 markup. So if I go to the level 1 heading.
Hello, what can we help you with? Heading level 1.
So this is the first heading in the page. So if I press down arrow.
Separator, blank, link your orders. List of 2 bullet track packages. Bullet editor cancel orders. List and link returns and refunds.
Returns.
List of 2 items. Bullet return or exchange items. Bullet print return mailing labels.
And
list and link device support.
Device support. So if that was a heading, that would be easier for me to identify. Screen reader users will generally navigate by headings first. So normally we would skim through the headings of the page before we look at the links.
Right, so if we had just made those blue titles headings, Mike would have found device support immediately within seconds of landing on the page. But instead we've made him navigate link by link before he got to where he needed to go. So headings are a lot more important than we think. They represent the hierarchy of your page. So imagine your page is a tree, and I think it's easy for us to imagine a page is a tree, because our page is a tree in many ways. So what your page is about, that's your H1. It sounds kind of obvious, but sometimes it's not. That page right there had 2 H1s. So if you're seeing that, navigating that out of context, through a screen reader, it tells you this is an H1 and this is an H1. So what is this page about really? Just your H1 is what your page is about, and just go from there. You should be able to look at your list of headings, if you could kind of pull them out of the markup. And by looking at nothing else, that list of headings should tell you what your page is about. It shouldn't tell you everything that's on your page, but you should get an idea of the main message that page is trying to send by just looking at those headings. Another important thing to remember is, you should only have a single H1, and sometimes the opposite happens, because we need several different headings, and they're kind of smaller in style, we just jump straight to H2. So again, if you're navigating that out of context, you see a bunch of H2s, but no H1, so it's hard to tell what the page is about. It kind of puts a lot more kind of cognitive strain on the person trying to deduce what your page is about from all the H2s. If they just had an H1, you could tell right away. Also, if something's a heading, just make it a heading. It sounds kind of obvious, but if it looks like a heading, it introduces a section. It's kind of directly related to the thing at the top in the H1. It's probably a heading, so give it a H1. So things like those blue titles that we saw there, those are like represent the different parts of your page, and they introduce a little section beneath them, so they should be an H2. The opposite is also true. Just because we want something to look in a certain way, sometimes we can take the shortcut and say, oh, this thing needs to be bold and a little bit bigger. It's not really a heading, it's just something else. But we give an H tag because the browser gives us some like default styling in the H tag, so we just kind of use that. And we did that at the FT for a while before we really started to improve accessibility. All of our footer were a bunch of links that took you to a bunch of places, and they were kind of bold and small, so we made them all H6s. So if you're navigating out of context, you get all these H6s that don't seem to link to anywhere, because they're really not headings, they were just links that were bold and small. So yeah, just because something needs to be boldish and for a certain size doesn't mean it kind of deserves to be a heading. Just always think back, does this introduce content? And is it like semantically a child of the thing at the top? If it is, great. If not, then just use some CSS to style it instead. For our fourth example, I want to go back to videos and captions. So one of our colleagues at the Financial Times put together a video for us. His name is Ben Fletcher. He's a principal engineer in the FT.com team, and besides kind of leading that team, he's built features like our machine learning algorithms that curate thousands of news feeds every day, and he's a software engineer and writes code most of the day, like a lot of us here. So I'm going to let Ben tell you about captions and why they matter.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm deafblind. Let's see. Here is a web page and there's a video, but it has no captions. I don't understand any of it. Let's try another video. It has captions, but the text is too small. Another video. It has captions and good-sized subtitles, but it's almost transparent. Poor contrast with the video gives me a headache trying to read. Finally, here's a video with all these things addressed. But there are mistakes in the captions. It's frustrating. You know, sometimes my work colleagues would applaud after watching a great talk, and I would just copy their applause, even though I couldn't follow the video.
Captions aren't optional. They're absolutely essential if you're distributing any kind of audiovisual content. It can sometimes be understandable that if you don't have a budget, you can't really have a professional captioning service. Say you're pushing to YouTube your knitting video, and you can't hire someone to caption your video for that. So in those cases, auto captions in YouTube are a good start. They're completely useless out of the box most of the time, but they can, if they're generated automatically, YouTube puts them there, and the good thing is you can edit them. And they've got the timings right with the video, they're synced correctly. They're probably all the wrong words, but you can just go in there and edit them and make them make sense. And it's usually things, switching words and just fixing punctuation that really goes a long way from having a bunch of text you can't understand to making the video something that can actually be consumed. So to wrap up, I just want to leave you with a few takeaways. Focus styles are kind of the equivalent of your mouse cursor. Every time you think about just making it smaller, making it just, or removing it altogether, imagine you were doing the same thing to your cursor, to the pointer that people use with their mouse. The browser defaults go a long way in terms of focus styling. So if you don't have any kind of weird scenarios or like complex backgrounds, just stick with that, you'll be fine. So yes, always test your site without a mouse. It can be very quick, it can take you like 30 seconds to just make sure you're going through the page and you can land on everything you expect to click. If you've kind of used HTML out of the box and you haven't changed the semantics, you'll be fine. If you did something like the Angular example, or did something like making a button out of a div, which you shouldn't do, but if you have that for some reason, make sure it has a tab index to put that thing in the tab order so that people can land on it and click on it. Headings reflect your page structure. You should be able to tell what your page is about by just looking at the headings and nothing else. And finally, captions aren't optional. So next time you publish a video, I encourage you to think, would I publish this video without audio? If the answer is no, please make sure you caption it before you publish it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.